Hi there, Doug from TauStats. And as we approach the launch of Dtao on Bittensor, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of anticipation, and there are a lot of questions because Dtao is fundamentally changing the way emissions work on the Bittensor network. So we're creating content, we're creating videos trying to make Dtao more accessible to the Bittensor community. So in this video, we're going to walk through how emissions work in Dtao now that we have alpha tokens on every single subnet. Emission today is initially decided by validators on the root subnet, figuring out how much tau is divided amongst all of the different subnets. The root subnet is still going to play a role in Dtao emissions. But the cool part about Dtao is now every single subnet has its own token. We generalize that token is called alpha, but subnet 1 is alpha, subnet 2 is beta, going on and on till we're out of Greek letters, and we have Hebrew, and then we have Arabic. And you can buy the token and stake those tokens to determine how the emissions are distributed amongst all of the different subnets. Now, inside a subnet, a participant of the network can buy alpha and stake that alpha on a validator. And you earn higher returns, higher rewards by staking alpha as opposed to staking on root. We also know that every single block, one alpha is distributed amongst everybody who is staked on every single subnet. Let's walk through how that alpha is distributed amongst everybody in the subnet. We start off with one alpha, and if you've watched these videos, if you've been involved in the Bittensor network, this should look familiar. That alpha is split up amongst the subnet owner, the validators, and the miners. 18% to the subnet owner, 41% to the miners and the validators. The miners are then split up based on the scores provided by the validators. This is the incentive. It's basically a percentage, so whatever the miners get multiplied times this is how it's distributed to each of the miners. For validators, we need to take two things into account. The amount of tau staked globally on other subnets and on root, and also the amount of tau staked locally on the subnet. And so there's a global weight parameter for every single subnet. And that global weight parameter starts off at 1 for all global, 100% on global. So that's root and tau staked across all of the subnets. And then over time, mathematically, this is going to make its way to 50%, where it's 50% the entire network, all of the subnets in root, and then 50% the alpha holdings that you hold on the specific subnet. And so each subnet is going to have a global weight, and it will slowly move from 1 to 0.5. So the global part of the stake comes from the root. So if you've staked tau on root like we do today, that will play a part into the global part. But also your stake on all of the other subnets, your alpha, beta, gamma, delta, across all of the subnets. That all gets included in your global stake. Then you have a local stake, which is the alpha that you hold inside that subnet. Starts off at 100%, will make its way to 50%. So it'll initially look like this, right? Mostly global stake, a little bit of local stake. And then over time, it will make its way to 50-50. For ease of use on the chart, we're going to go 50-50 because that makes the space layout a lot easier as I'm trying to display this. Once we figure out the global weight, we can then figure out the global stake and the local stake. The local stake is your percentage of alpha that you have staked versus all of the alpha that's staked, times the amount of tau in the pool. So basically, this is sort of the value of your alpha in terms of tau. The global stake is summing that local stake across all of the subnets, and then the root stake as well, with a weighting percentage that is added to the root stake. So you're summing up the local stake across all the subnets plus the root. This is then applied to all of the validators. So in this case, we're just going to look at tau stats. For global, maybe tau stats is 10% of the global stake, but inside this subnet, it's 15%. These are made up numbers, but they don't have to be the same. Your global stake and your local stake are probably going to be different. The next division of all of this is if TauStats has parent hotkeys. We have videos on child and parent hotkeys if you want to learn more about how all that works. But if another validator adds a parent hotkey to TauStats child hotkey, they take a percentage of the rewards. TauStats then takes their take, and that's 9% for TauStats. They take 9% of the proceeds, so the remaining 91% go to the delegates. And that's split up into a global delegate take and a local delegate take. And then those two numbers are added together for the entire delegate take for this subnet. Now this is happening across all of the subnets for every single block. Let's do a couple examples just to see how this all works. Let's say you've staked only to root. On block one, you only have global stake. You don't have any alpha. So that comes through and you were awarded alpha based on your global stake. But now you've been awarded alpha. So on block two, guess what? You have a little bit coming through on the local side because you do have a little bit of alpha now. It may just be dust, it may be very small, but you're now earning alpha. And this is going to occur across all of the subnets. So you stake to root, you're going to earn alpha, beta, gamma, delta out through all of the letters. And it's going to slowly increase because now you're also gaining your global stake, but you're also gaining local stake. And so you'll see your local stake increase over time. What if you take only stake onto alpha? Well, when you stake onto alpha, most of your rewards are going to come through on the local stake. But if you remember, your global stake is a sum of all the local stakes plus the root. So you have one value right here in this summation. So there's going to be a little bit of dust coming through this way, through the global stake. And that will grow over time. So what's interesting about this is even if you stake locally, you stake only on subnet 37, for example, you're still going to earn dust on all of the other subnets. And so that will accumulate over time across all of the subnets. If you stake on root, you're going to gain an even amount across all of the subnets based on the emission for all of the subnets. The math behind all of this is pretty complicated, but we will create some videos to try to walk through that as it is finalized and set into stone. But for right now, what's important is just to sort of see the general flow of how Dtao emissions are going to flow through the Bittensor network. So again, we're TauStats. Come to taostats.io for all your analytics needs on the Bittensor network. And thank you for watching. And watch the channel for more videos all about Dtao.